or something, right?
They would ring it. That was so sad. I'll tell you, it was very sad. Jimmy Strasburg, right in the corner, was killed. I think it was Jimmy. Jimmy Saddleberg, relation to Roger, it would have been his uncle. He was killed. His wife was Pearl. And, you know, they were all guys from our church. Zastro was killed.
Yeah, Don Schroeder was telling me, by the way, about the bells themselves and how the bells would ring however many years a person lived. And he remembered that his mother could basically recognize most of the time who was killed by virtue of how many times the bell rang, the equivalent of the age. And it would start out with the bell ringing a tone that indicated death, and then afterward the age. Something like that.
Aware of that. If you remember,
they were right there.
Don from Dutch House, long beard, and you know, his mother was Leona Schumacher, who married her Don's father, Bob Schroeder. We all knew each other.
Sure.
My sister was a good friend of Don's mother.
And when we got together, by the way, she told me a number of things from before that I wanted to revisit. And one of the things was that you mentioned, and even Don didn't know this, but that the third floor of what was then the second town hall was occupied between 1902.
Not the third floor, the second floor.
The second floor? But people live up there? Were they
I don't want to give away secrets, but yes, they did. Well, because
they're dead now, I'm sure.
It's been a long time.
I know, but it's someone that worked for the town, and I do not want to name who it was.
That's okay. That's okay.
But when this girl's mother was living, she was married to this guy, and they had three kids, I think. And they lived in the boulevard in one of those little corner houses. Well, the father was not a very honest guy, and he robbed and stuff. And he went to jail and so forth. And the poor mother didn't know what to do. She had no money. The town put her up in the town hall, and I would play with the kids. In fact, Marilyn Agansky from Tonawanda, she was married to one of those kids.
Oh my goodness.
That's who it was.
Okay.
Wow.
And it was his sister that worked for the town
Oh, I see.
later in life. And I do not want to mention who it was.
That's
It's
right.
just-
No, but you know, even just to know that, again, as you pointed out, this is such a local community.
Yes.
This was an unofficial town center. People came in and out, and back in the day, you took care of your extended relatives in the same
That's
place, especially if they were on hard times, at least
Yeah.
temporarily. You
Yeah.
might have a separate bedroom. You might, an older member of the family might have a little addition tacked to another building, like the other, the Blom house down the way had that a little addition off the backside for, I believe, the mother-in-law, someone like that.
You know,
That's where she lived, or
yeah, it wasn't the Bloom house at all. It was across the street where this family lived, because there were houses there. Dolores Jensen lived in one of them, I remember. And they all went to St. John's School, so we knew them. The Strasburgs, that first house on Ward Road on the left-hand side, their son, they were all Lutherans at our church, and their son was going to the Walter League meeting at church with my brother and Blooms that lived in that little house that's now
down the way from St. John's School and all that.
Yeah. St. John's School is part of that property now. They raised, in fact, I might have put it in here, they raised their nephew, Eugene Tuttle.
Oh, yeah.
And Eugene walked over to Strasburg's house to pick up, I think it was Jimmy, not the one that was killed, that was the younger brother. And he ended up, a drunk driver came along and killed Eugene.
Oh, goodness.
And it's like, oh my God, we were all devastated. It was so sad. Because he was, what, 15, 16? That was a real blow to all of us. But they were drunk drivers at that time.
Yeah.
Nobody cared. They drank.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Well, we look at the one of our favorite TV series is Perry Mason, and of course, there's always a mini bar right there. You know, the guy would come right on in,
Okay.
and right before he'd have a drink, and say, "Well, see you, Miss Mabel," and he would go after he had the drink. Out the door he goes, and she's like, "Hi, you know, bye." It wasn't a big deal.
Right.
Yeah, and you had mentioned that when there would be town board meetings, when you were younger, you used to peek in the windows.
Poochie crawling on.
Yeah, Poochie Crawl. Now, tell us about that time, because you explained about the St. John's festival there, the sort of family picnic kind of thing.
Not
field
family,
days?
fireman's picnic.
Fireman's picnic. Thank you. Right.
Fireman's picnic. Okay.
Tell me about those times.
Okay. Where is it here? There's about Minnie Bloom and Eugene Tunnell and William Stoeckel, and Pastor Fimeke was the pastor, and his wife used to give piano lessons and sing in church. And we'd all laugh because she. Anyway.
Well, she thought it was great.
I was kind of a.
An imp, we'll say.
I was like Nancy in high school, have fun.
You weren't like the good daughter. That was Aunt Ruth.
We laughed a lot.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, we had a crew. It was Dick Perry and Dick Lemke and Herb Heskey, and you know, we were all Johnsburg kids. And when it
Yeah.
snowed and there was so much snow, and the buses from Niagara Falls to Buffalo would get stuck, we'd be out there in our snow
Oh my
suits.
gosh, sure.
I
Right.
said about that bridge, and I almost drowned under that bridge one time when, don't you dare go on that creek. It's not frozen enough. Poochie and I went on the creek, and I fell in. Poochie Crawl had to lay on his stomach and get me out. And I said to Nancy, I got a spanking when I got home, too.
Oh my God. Right, because you couldn't hide it.
I
Right?
did.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Anyway, the Kroll
lucky.
family
Very lucky.
consisted of William Jr., that was Bill Kroll Jr., Isabel, who married to Martin, Harold Kroll, who was Pete, and Melvin, who they call Poochie, who was my pal. So Poochie and I were about the same age. He was a year older than I was. In fact, his birthday is November 22nd. I remember that. And Poochie and I where they had the field days. Okay, he was from the bar. His parents had the bar right here on the corner.
Right.
And
Right.
the bar, there was the house. Poochie had the two dogs, Trixie and Brownie. So I still have a scar on my knee when I tripped over Trixie and hit glass
Oh.
between the garage and the ice house. There was a huge ice house because everybody had to have ice for the bars and stuff, but it was empty. Poochie and I would go in that empty ice house, and we would crawl on the rafters. I don't know how we ever.
Survived childhood.
Poochie taught me well, you be careful. But Poochie and I would go onto the grounds after the firemen's picnics. And of course, every fireman picnic had beer tents.
Oh yeah, still do.
10 cents a beer, 10 cents a beer.
Right.
So we would scour the beer tent for dimes. One time we found $1. I remember that so well. And at those picnics, they always have bingo games. And they had all these prizes, lamps and all kinds of things, nice things. Poochie won me a lamp one time. When we were older.
Huh.
Yeah, Poochie was my pal, really. But at these picnics, Dorothy being 10 years older than me, and I don't know if it was wartime or not, but they would pull out dance floors, and they were stored in Kroll's ice house. So the dance floors would come
Oh.
out, and then they would have bands that would play. Had to be wartime, because the dancers were young people, and Dorothy would be dancing with like Ralph Mellentine, and they were all in the Army and Navies and so forth. But I remember the uniforms. There were quite a few uniforms, home on furlough and so forth. But those were good times.
World War II?
Yeah, and it was probably 25 cents a dance. You know, beers were 10 cents.
I'd rather stay at the bar and drink for 10 cents rather than 25 cents and take
They
that.
were slow dances. They weren't, you know, they were romantic
Yeah.
songs. They were
Especially
war
during
songs.
war.
Sure, they were melodies that,
Like Glenn Miller.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, because Glenn Miller was popular. I had Glenn Miller dance, paper dolls. I had, Betty Grable paper dolls. Yeah.
Wow.
My mother used to buy me a lot of paper dolls. I love paper dolls and making clothes for them and so forth. But yeah, you know, it was a good time. We've had good childhood memories, really.
Well, and you and Lois used to play in the cemetery too, right?
Yes, and Lois, now that's crazy, because Lois was named Lois Ertel, U-R-T-E-L, Ertel, but we called it Ertel. She lived in a farmhouse that's no longer there, across from Teddy's restaurant.
Oh, okay.
And Teddy's restaurant, you could go in and for 5 cents, you'd get a huge ice cream cone, 5 cents.
Okay.
And he would load it up so much. And we'd sit there during like high school days. We would go there and put a quarter in the jukebox. They had a Wurlitzer jukebox in there. And Lois and I went all through grade school together. She was raised by her grandma and grandpa Worth. Now, you know probably who Sharon Muir is. Sharon, okay, and Sharon's mother was Esther Herman. Esther Herman was the daughter of Anna Worth, who lived in that farmhouse. And then there was the barn, and then Herman's house. Woody Herman's is Sharon's brother and so
And this
forth.
is across the boulevard from
Yes.
Teddy's Rest back
Yes.
in there. Okay.
Yes. And then next door to Esther Herman is now the motel.
Okay.
But
Right.
that was Louis Worth's farm at one time. And Lois came from Ohio, and she was going to stay at that motel, and they wanted so much money. She says, I'm not paying that kind of money to stay where Louis Worth had his barn. You've got to see Lois. You've got to know Lois saying this. Lois was always smiling. But Lois and I were young, and in grade school we had to wear long stockings
Here comes the story.
to school. And weekdays they were brown stockings, long brown stockings. Sundays you wore white long stockings. Never pants. Never. You always had a skirt on. So we were, and my brother was 6 years older than I was. There were 4 of us. Ruth was 3 years older. My brother Paul was 6 years older. My sister Dorothy was 10 years older than I was. I was the baby. Okay, my mother sewed. My mother sewed everything. My underwear. She sewed my underwear. The elastic broke when we were playing London Bridge is Falling Down.
That's appropriate.
Never forget that. Oh my God, we're playing London Bridge is Falling Down, and Mrs. Hebner, and my pants flying on the floor. And my brother had to go home and get me a new pair. And Mrs. Hebner took me into the cloakroom where you hung your coats. That's when we had an outhouse yet at St. John's School.
The privy, yeah.
Well, didn't they sing Esther's Bridges?
My brother, oh my God, my brother.
As your bridge is falling down.
For years. You know, God, I can't record it, I forgot.
You were just a kid.
We really
Of
did
course,
have
of
some
course.
fun times. But yeah, what were you asking me?
About the town hall and the meeting.
Oh, yes, Poochie and I.
Might as well,
We'll get
really,
there.
the same idea. Could be reputations falling down instead of
We'll get there eventually.
No, it relates. It really does, honestly.
I bet Alice
Yeah,
Licht
she's
told you some
92.
fun things too. Alice Licht?
Right, yes.
I said, I bet
yes.
she told you some fun
Oh,
things.
indeed.
Indeed, yes, because I
indeed.
knew that family. We used to babysit for them.
And you know, it's okay, because you know, people don't necessarily change all that much. It's just it's just what people were doing that matters. If people, the ebb and flow, it's not too surprising, honestly, because it's.
Yeah,
you
there
know,
was Lois and
kids being kids,
myself.
for example, then, now, yeah, so.
Lois and myself and Jackie Rogers, who was Jackie Andrews at the time. And the three of us would babysit for George and Molly Pankow, that would be Alice's parents. We would babysit for them because probably, I don't know, once a month, maybe more, they would have dances at the fire hall, and which was right 2 doors from me, right behind Crow's.
Yeah, you're
Yeah,
right.
they would have
Yeah,
dances upstairs.
the peppermint.
So
yeah,
those
yeah.
people all went to the dance. So every time there was a dance, Lois would be babysitting, maybe Pankhouse, because that was cousin to her, and Jackie would be babysitting Fritz and Corky's kids, and it's like, oh my God, we had our jobs. Yeah. So that's
Right.
how we earned a few extra dollars and so forth. But the town hall meetings, Poochie and I would just do that occasionally. But the fun thing, Poochie and I, the town hall then stored all their big barrels of tar.
Oh,
And in the
yes.
summer, it would get very hot, and that tar would melt. I always wore a dress.
Oh.
Well, my mother made them all, right?
Yeah.
We would chew tar.
Instead
When you
of
lived
gum.
in Philadelphia.
Goodness.
I must have learned it from Poochie.
Goodness gracious.
Honest to goodness, we would chew it, yes. And then, I'd get tar on my clothes, and my mother had to take kerosene to get it out.
Because back then, the town hall site was also the equivalent to the highway garage was.
That's
Because it was
right.
all back there.
That's
Yeah,
right.
the garages were still there.
Yes.
And so, yeah, it
Yes,
makes sense.
and
Everything
we would
was
sit
done.
on the rollers where they would roll the blacktop and so forth.
Mm,
We would play on the rollers. Oh yeah, it was a good
Yes.
time. It really was.
There was something you told me at one point where, stop me if I'm wrong, but on a Sunday, after everything had services and so forth had concluded for the day, did you not at one point actually flag down somebody with a friend and go on a little trip and then come back?
Mm-hmm.
Something like
Your
that.
motorcycles. You went to Wilson.
Yeah.
Oh, Poochie. Poochie would, that was Poochie that would take me on his bike, on his motorcycle.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Is that what?
Yeah, it was because I might have misremembered, but it was a time when sometimes someone would flag somebody down.
No, that was
and
Jackie and I on a Sunday afternoon. We said, what are we gonna do today? Well, let's go to Alcott. Let's hitchhike. We did. We got a ride right here on Ward Road. So a couple of guys picked us up. I think they had no, they didn't have a convertible. No, they didn't. But yeah, they picked us up and they took us all the way down to Alcott, because they were out riding around too. And so we were in Alcott, and then they were gonna bring us home again. And then on the way home, by this time, Jackie and I must have been 17 at least, because Jackie had already Lois was working at Robert Gere, so we must have been 18 or 19. So Jackie saw this car. Jack Perry from Wilson, who turned out was an auctioneer for years, and was like our age then. And her boyfriend was Buck Rogers, and Buck was in that car. And so we said to the guys that picked us up, stop, stop. And so they stopped, and we got in Jack Perry's car with Buck Rogers, who she ended up marrying, Jackie and Buck. Yeah, and they went, I'll never forget this, we were coming down Ward Road, and Jack Perry was going 100 miles an hour, and we were like paranoid. We were so scared. But then he slowed up. I mean, he was doing it just to show up in a convertible.
Wow.
He was kind of a money guy from Wilson, I think, but he was an auctioneer for years.
And you were in the car with them?
At that time, but we met all those guys at Jody's on 104 because Buck Rogers, Ralph Rogers, was from Church Road in North Ridge.
Mm-hmm.
And we met him because Lois worked at Robert Gere on Shawnee Road, which is still the box company.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
And
right.
she earned 50 cents an hour when she started. I worked at Wurlitzer. I earned 75 cents an hour when I started. And Durwood Bent said, oh, there's a race, a stock car race Sunday at Lockport. And a guy from our plant is going to be racing, Buck Rogers. So Lois said, hey, let's go. So Jackie and Lois and I and Claire Persky, we all went to the stock car races, and we're cheering for this Buck Rogers. We don't even know who he is. And Durwood said, you want to meet him? Meet us at Jody's. He hangs out at Jody's, which was a bar on 104. So we did, and we met Buck Rogers.
Wow.
It ended up Jackie and Buck got married. Jackie and Buck were probably the truest members of St. John Church. Buck was the president, his son Mark was the president for years, and they both died of cancer.
Ooh.
And that was very sad because their daughter Cheryl even writes now, what is Cheryl's last name? She divorced Heffron, the one that's president of the fire company.
Right,
now.
over there, yeah.
She divorced him, and she married Jim Oliver. Cheryl Oliver, I see her name.
Yes.
Yes,
she does comments.
That
Yeah,
is
which is
the daughter
great.
of Jackie and Buck.
Oh.
And I know Cheryl
Oh.
quite well too.
Wow.
Yeah, and Jill Rogers, she's even my godchild. Yeah,
Huh.
so,
Wow. Yeah.
these happenings all happen for a reason.
And I remember too at the time that, I thought to myself at first, like, goodness, young girl, just hitchhiking with just anybody that comes around. But then you said the key phrase, which was that men were gentlemen back then.
They were.
In
They
general.
were. We thought nothing of. Everybody hitchhiked. They used to hitchhike Joni and Muriel and Helen and all them. They would hitchhike over to Beaver Island and everywhere. People did it.
Mm-hmm.
Thought nothing of it.
And so when we see these scenes in these movies where somebody just hitches a ride with somebody, nobody would have felt anything of it, and practically it's like having a drink before you hit the road.
Yeah, you really don't know. But a lot of questions come into the Facebook about Fred Lemke.
Right, and with that, the latest post on Fred Lemke's house there, Judge Lemke's house, and there's a lot of great responses to it. The house itself isn't around anymore. Evidently, it had foundation issues and had to be
Is that what it
had to
was?
be taken down by the mid-90s. That's what I was told.
Okay.
And the barn of that complex is still part of the Thruway Fasteners
And I
complex.
remember when all that happened, because
Yeah.
Paul was the same age as my sister Dorothy. And we were neighbors, of course.
Yeah.
But Paul Lemke, good-looking guy. And he always thought he was a little above everybody. And he worked at Buffalo Bolt.
Mm-hmm.
And Irv Klamer from Linwood Avenue. Irv worked there. And when Buffalo Bolt did some closure or something, well, my sister Dorothy married a guy from Buffalo Bolt too. And then Buffalo Bolt somehow ended up, they were disbanding or something. Paul and Irv Klamer, and I forget who the other guy was, started Thruway Fasteners. Right next door
okay,
to,
right.
to Lemke's, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and when they started, you know, they had money to work with, so they did quite well. And then Paul was married to Lorraine, her name was, and everybody called her Queenie. And she was such a nice person. She died of cancer, very young, very young. And we were all sad from that.
But the Lemke started the Thruway Fasteners business, and that
Yes.
became, okay.
Yes, and Irv Klamer, in fact, ended up going to Long Island. And I don't know if it was because of Thruway Fasteners or Buffalo Bolt, but that's for Mary Lou and Kathy. I don't know if you remember
I
them
remember them.
when you were a child, when Grandma and Grandpa there. But yeah, and Debbie Dexheimer still keeps in touch with Mary Mary Klamer. So does Linda. Yeah. But yeah, and then I wrote here, growing up, our neighbor to the east was Fred Lemke, and who was the justice of the peace for some time. His wife was Tilly Schulmeister Lemke. Her mother was Grandma Schulmeister, who had the store where
Yes.
she
Yeah.
had the store.
On Ward Road over here.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, and I would go over there for bread, and it was, what, 10 cents a loaf then?
Mhm.
Because my mother would send me over. She didn't have baked bread in the house. I'd go over to Grandma Schumeister's. And I remember one night I was walking over there to the store, and some guy followed me that had been at Crow's. And I got so scared. And he stopped me and he said, "Would you like to have some fun?" I said, "No," and I ran, lickety split. Oh my God, I was so scared. And I got in Grandma Schumeister's and I kept talking and talking to her, and God, I hope that guy is gone. Well, I ran through the field to my house. You know,
Behind all the, yeah.
behind, yeah.
All the other ones, yeah.
And there's her phone again. And when I did, my brother was home, and I told Paul, he went over to Crow's looking for the guy. The guy must have gotten on the bus, and he was not there. But I remember that as being a very scary thing. Yeah, and then Grandma Schumeister, the tavern, oh, okay. And then the Crows, William Crow, the father, was married to Esther Schumeister.
Oh, yes.
So Tilly Lemke, Esther Crow were daughters of Grandma Schumeister.
Ah, okay.
Okay, that was
Right.
their mother.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
and then Fred and Tilly Lemke had the two sons, Paul, that started Thruway Fasteners, and Elvin. And Elvin lived the next house from Grandma Schumeister's. And Elvin had two kids, Roger and Diane.
Gotcha.
Roger died, I know, because he was a friend of Terry Strasberg.
And didn't Grandma Schulmeister pass away in the house?
Oh, yeah,
Of
she
a
was
brain,
the-
of a brain
She's the one
situation.
that crocheted the pineapple tablecloth for me that I
Oh.
gave you
Oh my God.
when I got married. Yeah,
Nice.
she was a sweet lady.
And if you're ever interested in donating, just kidding.
Yeah.
Well, the Das House, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah, we do
Pastor
talk about it.
Thimeke
Right.
had 3 children,
Mhm.
and Walter was the oldest. And he married Esther Furchin from Burgos, and they lived on Stoeckel Street, right down the road. And he sold skins of like muskrats and whatever you
Oh,
call
yeah,
it.
wow.
Yeah, he was really in business. And then Robert, their son Robert, was an artist. And he ended up moving to Chicago. And then Margaret Thimeke was the same age as my sister Dorothy. And her daughter is still here, but I don't keep in touch with her.
Wasn't there a stone or something just outside of the Boulevard Zimmendorf house where carriages used to pull up to and unload
They must
passengers?
remove that.
Yeah.
But I remember it.
You do?
Sure,
It
yeah,
was like a step, right,
Yeah.
to get off your horse or to
Yeah.
get out of the carriage.
and I've looked and it's gone.
Mhm.
When they
They probably didn't.
modified the boulevard eventually. They
No,
probably
this was,
removed- no?
By
this
the
was
house.
by coming out of the side door of the house.
Oh, okay, right.
And it was
okay.
a wide, very wide, like sidewalk, and then it had concrete that was probably 8 feet long, maybe, and then a step, and a ring on it.
Mm-hmm, where they tie up the horses.
They-
Right.
yeah.
Oh, yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Sure.
But
They
some-
probably didn't know what it was. That's too bad.
Mhm.
I don't know, but I knew what it was.
And so, how long did you live in that house? On
Well,
the
I
boulevard?
moved here when we were 3, so I lived there until I was married, 25.
Mm-hmm.
And then Poochie and you'd go, you didn't call anybody, you didn't have a phone. So you'd stand outside of their house, Poochie, Poochie. So, I don't know, somehow Poochie and we heard Harlan Growe calling me at the back door. Poochie and I didn't want to see him. So we put space in the porch, under the porch. We could crawl in, and we would crawl in here and let him call all he wanted. We would never answer.
When you were still kids, right? Or
Yeah, this is when we were
Oh,
young.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So you and Poochie, never married, right? But you were friends.
Oh,
for
no,
life.
no, Poochie married Ruthie Kroll, yeah.
So I have
That's my
pictures.
mother,
Oh yes.
it's my mother.
The little,
Oh, the step?
Oh yeah. Okay.
That's
Yeah.
a
the
cistern.
water.
She's sitting in the cistern.
On the cistern,
And that was
yeah.
a water pump. That was the cistern. I used to have to go down to Devontiers because Mr. Devontier had a tank truck. That's, yeah.
I'll give you my email
When-
if you want to send.
I